Hi, welcome to Connecting Dots. I'm Akash Chaudhary, and today we'll be talking about the most important factor for the Middle East, UAE e-invoicing. And I'm joined by two gentlemen from our technology team and functional team, Rajesh, who heads our digital platform of all tech stack, and Viral, who heads the functional side for all our tech stack. Hi guys, how are you?
Akash, we are good.
So I think you must be knowing that the UAE invoicing is the next big thing in Middle East. And eventually when we are talking to enterprises and taxpayers, the feedback that we get is, why is the authorities doing it? So what's your opinion on that? Like, why tax authorities generally look at e-invoicing rollout and the whole technology complications that come with it?
Okay, so there are multiple factors why tax authority is introducing e-invoicing across globe. One of the first factor is they want to digitize the entire economy, because right now what is happening is all about paper e-invoicing. So they are unable to track what is happening at the transaction level. Once they introduce the e-invoicing at the country level, they will be able to see like what sort of different transaction is happening out of the business, and they will be able to pinpoint the actual economy that is happening at the country level. The other is obviously the good benefit of introducing the invoices, because it reduces the physical print that you need to take out for a invoice, because you can use this particular invoice in a digital manner, which is into the structured format and PDF format that you can send to your buyers. The third one is using this e-invoicing across the country, they will be able to help to interoperate this e-invoice across all business without doing modification at the ERP level to automate their purchase register. So these are the some good benefit that tax authorities see to introduce e-invoicing at the country level.
Right. And now these are like the generic points which globally each tax authority would look for. But what's different, or how does UAE's e-invoicing regime compare to, let's say, Saudi Arabia, which is their neighbors? Or like what's the difference?
So it's difference between the model they have adopted. In Saudi, it's like clearance model, where first you require to clear your invoice from the tax authority, and then only you will be able to provide that particular invoice to your buyer. While in case of USE, it is purely reporting model, where you can send your e-invoice directly to your buyer, and then alternately in next session or in next transaction, you can send that particular invoice to tax authority also. So it's a reporting kind of model where you are allowed to send it directly to your buyer without worrying about whether it has been received or validated by tax authority or not. The second is, in Zatka, there is no Peppol framework, which means Zatka has its own structured format by which you require to do invoicing with the tax authority, while UAE has adopted the good benefits of Peppol, by which you are required to transfer the e-invoice into the XML format, which is UAE pinned format, and by using this you will be able to interoperate your entire e-invoice, not within UAE but internationally also, for your export kind of thing.
Now, you mentioned Peppol framework or the benefits of the Peppol framework. Would like to know, what is this Peppol framework? We've heard the name, but yeah.
So Peppol framework, basically it correlates and coordinates sellers directly to the buyers. How? It happens over an AS4 protocol. So basically Peppol has predefined set of document types, predefined set of transaction types that a particular seller can send it to the buyers on a particular framework. So the framework itself is termed as Peppol. Peppol consists of various document types, as I said. So basis the requirement of a seller can basically initiate a document transfer. Let's say it's an example of an invoice. So a seller can punch in the invoice details into his ERP system. Now, rather than sending it over an email or sending a physical copy to the buyer, he can make use of a Peppol framework and send the copy directly to the buyer. Now, the best thing about the Peppol framework is it also helps the corner file, that is the tax authority, to pitch into the framework, so that the seller at the same moment, while sending the invoice to the buyer, they can also send it to the tax authority for the reporting or a clearance purpose, as the model may be.
Understood. So it's more like a network or a framework through which I can send the invoices, and the same gets reported to the tax authority as well.
Correct.
Very nice. So for a layman, if you have to explain it, because it seems like a very technical term or a technical thing. Let's say for the folks who are into finance or who are not so close to the technology, can they think of it like a telecom operation where you call up somebody and how they route the call to the next person? In the same way, I'm just pushing the invoice to the network, just like I'm dialing the number, and then the invoice is received by my buyer. Okay. Any particular advantages which Peppol has over, let's say, if there is any other framework in the globe? Any particular comparison do we know, or any key differentiator that we know?
So, if we talk about e-invoicing in general, without people, the sellers are directly connected via the service providers to the tax authorities, and that is via their APIs, set of APIs. That means that whenever an invoicing takes place and an e-invoice is generated, it's only limited to be sent to the tax authority. Whether the e-invoice is shared to the buyer or not, whether the invoice is received by the buyer or not, these all feedbacks seller does not get. So basically, it's the initiation of the invoice and submitting to the tax authority, it's limited up to that. But when we talk about the Peppol framework network as a whole, as we rightly said, it's basically helps in routing the invoices via the various access points to the buyers. When we say access points, it's basically, the corner 3 and the corner 2 that we talk about, whose responsibility is to enable the source ERP, that is sellers and the buyers ERP, to integrate with them, and it's their responsibility to pick up the invoices and send it to the tax authority. So each and every entity within the Peppol framework and the network has been assigned a set of well-defined responsibilities, whether to validate the invoice, whether to route the invoice, and whether to provide a feedback back to the authorities or to the seller in a similar manner, which encompasses and encapsulates, secure transmission of the entire invoices which happens between the buyer and the seller.
And we have also seen that businesses see this e-invoicing as a compliance thing, that I just need to comply. It's like a tick marks. I'm done. But can they also look at it, or can this help them to drive efficiency, cost saving, digital transformation, something beyond just a compliance?
Yes. So one of the good benefit of adopting the e-invoicing is, you are able to get that e-invoice into the PDF form, which is the digital, which is legally valid after e-invoicing gets applied at the country level. So it directly impacts on your cost benefits, because earlier you require to print that particular invoice, you need to send to the customer based on the printing part, right? That is now, it will go away with the e-invoicing.
Yeah.
Second is, after introduction of e-invoicing, because it's a framework where you are required to transfer data in a structured format, your buyers are able to digitalize, or I'll say automate their purchase automation, because it will straight away come within the structure format, which they can utilize to automate their purchase entry. This will help them to automate the entire process of source to pay, which is, I'll say, a very good benefit for a particular organization or industry.
Absolutely. And I think if the source to pay part of, or if the purchase process is streamlined, if I'm the seller, you are the buyer,
yes,
the payment which you need to send to me may be a little bit faster.
Maybe.
So that's also one positive point which a seller might get. Very nice. And on the same front, how about the cross-border transactions? Like, we are talking that Peppol is a framework. We are talking in UAE, it is happening. Some other countries, it might also be there. What happens? Like, does the same apply for a transaction from UAE to Singapore? How will the cross-border transaction be impacted?
Export invoices especially, that are initiated by the sellers, they can be routed via Peppol framework to any country. So that means that if a buyer is residing in Singapore, as you take an example, and if the seller is initiating the e-invoice transfer from a UAE and it's an export invoice, the invoice was, let's say, booked in accounting currency, that is AED, and the actual, the transaction happened in USD. In such a case, the seller will basically draft an invoice as a document currency of USD with an accounting currency of AED, and as a recipient with a recipient identifier ID and the country as Singapore. The Peppol network will route that particular invoice to the recipient in the Singapore. So it will enable the cross-border transactions between the seller and the buyer. Now, the best part of the people framework is it's not just limited to certain set of documents like invoices or credit notes. Various contracts, agreements, POs, purchase orders, everything can be routed to the people. So even if there is a mandate by a particular country, let's say a seller has to initiate an e-invoice on top of only invoice or a credit note, it's not just limited to it. If you are on a people framework, you can, and if the participant, that is the recipient, enables the receiving of the purchase orders and contracts and the agreements, then in a seamless manner, not just invoices and the credit notes, but the entire formation of the S2P, where the actually it starts from the contracts and the agreements, then can be automated via people.
Amazing. Very nice. And now coming to, I think we understood very well defined why and what these are. Now let's move towards how. How a particular enterprise can become part of this. So we'll start from the basics. What are the core technology components in an e-invoicing, I would say, regime or compliance or framework?
Okay, so e-invoicing is like maze. There are a lot of components involved in order to transfer one particular invoice from source to destination. The first and foremost is you require a ASP, which is application service provider, so that you can integrate your source system with that particular application service provider system. It helps you to transfer your data in an autonomous manner, be it over API or SFTP or some data fetching mechanism. Once that is finalized, that ASP requires SMP, which is service metadata publisher, in order to identify where the participant is. So first they will do the lookup into the SML to locate where that particular participant resides into the SMP, and using that SMP they will be able to identify the capabilities of the participant, like what sort of document they support, on what protocol which I need to transfer the document. And then they require the final piece, which is access point provider. This access point provider basically helps to transfer the data from seller to corner 2, which is application service provider access point, to seller 3 access point, so that seamlessly in a digitally electronic exchange with the structure format, it transforms from seller to buyer. And even in some cases like in UAE, there is a corner 5. They are also required to transfer that particular document to the authority, which is the responsibility of access point provider. So broadly, these are the 3 major technology piece, or I'll say component, which is required to implement the e-invoicing.
And is there a possibility that many businesses have ERP in place? So ideally, I would assume, if I'm the business owner, that ERP will take care of everything. So does all ERPs support everything, or do you think that with e-invoicing, enterprise should look and introspect whether to upgrade their ERP or to maybe use it in a way that, okay, I can integrate to the e-invoicing components, or I need to completely like upgrade or change? So that will that be a decision that they need to take?
Yeah, obviously they need to take this decision, but I'll start with the basic. The first and foremost thing is they need to start mapping with the data dictionary. Now, challenge over here is not every source system or a ERP allows the modification into their existing system. So it becomes bottleneck for this. How they are going to, get this data which is required as a part of UAE PINT specification. So either they need to rely on their application service provider, where they be able to auto compute this set of data which is required as a part of data dictionary. So this is the first thing where they need to decide, like whether they will be able to change within their source system or they need to rely on ASP. Second is when it comes to whether you will be able to do all of these things into the single ERP, the answer is I'll say no, because it has lot of component which is involved into the entire process. As I said earlier, you require to do the SMP kind of thing, you require access point, and upon doing this, you also require the accreditation process. So if you start creating your own SMP or your API, it becomes bottleneck, because you also require to maintain the entire infrastructure in order to auto scale or up or down based on the traffic. And generally, access point is very secure when it comes to transferring data from one place to another. But when it comes to speed, you require a lot of infrastructure to increase to match the volume. So that's the reason I think you need to associate with the application service provider, and you just take care of the business field. Either you modify your existing system, or if you are not able to modify, then rely upon your ASP to compute on behalf of you.
Correct. And I think you rightly mentioned on the security part. So let me even touch base onto that since we are on the topic. Like cyber security, data privacy, they are very important in today's world.
Yes.
So how this Peppol framework, or let's say an ASP or a service provider, can ensure that the data is secure, and what are the measures one should look for?
So as an organization, first you need to get all those certification in order to be very serious about how capable of you are in terms of implementing those security. Like we being a Signet, we are ISO certified, SOC 2 certified, so we know all this security day in day out. Since we are into tech stack product business across globe, we have implemented this set of security. So first you need to secure your data. Your data needs to be in an encrypted format at the rest, right? Then whatever the PII data, which is personal information, it has to be encrypted at the cell level also. Whatever communication which will happen between your system to ASP system has to be on to the HTTPS protocol. And also you require to support the encryption when it comes to transferring the payload between source system to destination system. Apart from this, you require audit trail for each and every transaction which is happening within the ASP system, so that you can identify if anything goes wrong within your system, like whosoever has changed that particular transaction. You need to have that audit trail in place. And on top of that, your application needs to be VAPT certified. So these are some security measure which you need to implement, by which we can ensure that your data is secure and it is not open any injection at any point of time.
Right. And just extending that a bit, what about the integration approach? Like you mentioned HTTPS. So will the data go over an API, or there are other mediums of Peppol framework data transfer? How is that?
So on Peppol framework, that communication is happening over the AS4 protocol only.
What is it? AS4?
AS4 protocol. So that's the mandate. You cannot go away with the AS4. But
is it faster than API, slower than API?
Not faster than API. It is slower than API. The reason is it is quite secure in nature. It's one of the most secure form in terms of protocol to transfer data. But when it comes to source system and ASP, there are many secure channels by which you will be able to transfer the data, be it API or SFTP or other encrypted file mechanism.
Understood. Okay. And also, talking about technology, how can we miss AI? So AI is the buzzword, and automation, RPA, all of that. How is AI and bots being used nowadays in e-invoicing?
So majorly, when we talk about RPA bots, and we talk about certain set of transactions which gets reported in customs. So certain countries has their own custom portals. So when we talk about India has its own custom portal. Certain set of transactions, whether the goods are getting out of the country or whether it's coming into the country, this type of transactions are basically, routed to the customs portal. In a certain way, there is a need for a reconciliation between what was basically reported at the custom versus what was basically reported either in your sales register or your purchase register. And this is how, you get back the custom duty which you have paid, you get back the refunds, you can claim the taxes over it. And as a part of this reconciliation, bots are widely used. At a certain point in time, there is also, a requirement of, searching for a taxpayer, or let's say its details, so that whatever details you enter into an invoice, whether it's a validated taxpayer or not, what kind of status, yes, absolutely. So certain countries do provide the APIs for that, and certain countries do not. But they might have a portal wherein, user can log in and check their statuses online. So where the APIs or a mechanism of retrieving these details are not available, we can vastly make use of bots and basically, get this information. So at the end of the day, whether we are using bots or scrapping the websites, we are basically enabling us a level of compliance into the e-invoicing. The main purpose of doing that is, injecting a level of compliance into the invoicing, but not doing anything else. That we're not doing, sure.
Good. And now coming to the implementation side of story, because I think before that everyone says, we can do it all. But when the implementation starts, that's when the challenges keep in. And we have seen enterprises spending months and months but not able to conclude the implementation side of things. So maybe basis your experience, what have been the biggest implementation challenges that we have foreseen in e-invoicing implementations?
It differs industry wise, but the biggest challenges that we foresee across industry is, one one single central data warehouse where all data is available. Because today what is happening is every organization has multiple branches across country where they are doing sales, right? And what we have observed is even those branches or different segments of those business are using different source systems. Now, in order to collect those data from the different source systems and transfer it to ASP system, which is responsible for generating e-invoice, becomes bottleneck for industry, because there are challenges where some of the source system may able to integrate the APIs, while some system does not even allow the integration over API. So there you require different kind of methodology, right? So that's the one challenge. Second is e-invoicing is not just about transferring data in a one way. You require to transfer data from your search system to ASP system, but at the same time you also need to receive the response back to your system, so that you can keep that response against your transaction, that okay, for this particular the transaction has got succeeded and the invoice got generated. So those are the challenge. Apart from that, the obvious challenge is collecting the data set, right? Most of the businesses, generally what we see is whenever e-invoicing got launched across any of the country, usually the business source system does not have those fields in place. So they require to get those changes in place in order to, they comply with the data dictionary required by the tax authority. So those are the challenges at their end.
Yeah, talking about data dictionary, how many fields do the UAE data dictionary people have?
Okay, so let's talk about mandatory ones. Standard tax invoice has approximately around 50 mandatory fields. So the problem with this fields is, like, there was a VAT law that came before. There were certain fields which might not be required at that time to be incorporated into the invoice or whether to be punched into the ERP. So the Peppol framework and the Peppol XML, the Pint XML that we talk about, it requires certain set of fields that needs to be incorporated. So there is definitely delta between the two, and the delta needs to be incorporated by the taxpayers into their ERP system, where there will be certain service providers who can automate it to a certain extent to furnish the data, but still there will be a delta which might be remaining, or certain set of fields they might need to maintain into their master data as well. So as an example, products and services masters, now UAE is coming up with the mandate of using the HSN and the service codes into that, whether it's 4 digits, 6 digits or 8 digits. Ideally, a product master which is in place currently, they might be maintaining to the level of product codes and the item descriptions and the batches, etc., but they might not be holding the HSN or the service level information. And there can be quite a lot of complexities between the two HSN codes starting with the same 4 digits, but their rate might change. So such kind of complexities might need to be handled in the master data also. If we talk about vendor masters, now currently the vendor masters might be holding the TRNs or the tax registration numbers, etc. But when Peppol is in place, there can be various identifiers that can be sent across the Peppol XML for a particular recipient. So it can be their TRN number preceded by the scheme. That can be driving license number. That can be passport number. All these fields needs to reside into their master, because if anything is erroneous, in that case the sending of the invoices is going to fail. And if one wants to send the invoice seamlessly across the network, it needs to be maintained into the masters.
Correct. So I think data accuracy and getting the whole source data together is, I think, the critical part here.
And just on this part regarding the master data cleansing, right? Can we help the taxpayers or businesses to auto cleanse it using AI?
Absolutely, we can.
I think with AI and bot, definitely there could be some solutions around the same. and large businesses or more businesses have got thousands of records in there, which they would have been planning to clean for so long. But I think this is the right time to kickstart their digital transformation projects and ERP cleansing projects to have a compliance link to it.
In fact, the right way would be to onboard their vendors or the customers right into their solution itself. Once they are onboarded, everything is maintained by them. So let's say if you are uploading a self-billing invoice, which is, for a material which is purchased from a vendor, if you already have the inventory details, etc., which is available with the vendors available into your system, and you're getting the purchase related details, the chances of, the data being erroneous comes to a very, low extent.
Accuracy. Absolutely.
So digitalize your vendor onboarding journey. That's the starting point.
I think, that's the starting piece.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So talking, or maybe if you had to advise the enterprises or taxpayers within UAE, what will be your advice? Like, start with what? Maybe start early is one thing, but what are the initial few steps they can take from now onwards to be better prepared for the upcoming e-Invoicing?
Okay, so race is on, right? We all know that. And since the data dictionary is already published for the public consultation, the first thing one needs to do is study the model. And that is what we are there. We are basically guiding our taxpayers on what is the people model itself. Basically, everything starts with the IT being integrated into the system, and compliance level consultation with their own consultants. So ideally, the first place to start would be to get the IT people educated on the people thing. Second, onboard yourself onto the application service providers. Third is study the data dictionary, map it with the transaction level, transaction types, map the data with the ERP, and actually be ready with what needs to be submitted to your ASP providers. That is a good point to start with, because this is the only point where the taxpayers, if they start failing at the early point, they might face difficulties later. So one doesn't want to do that.
So as a business, one of the most important thing for me is how seamlessly my e-invoice generation will happen, because this is critical in nature. It's a live business transaction which is happening day in, day out, right? So I want something to be in a place, or I'll say the ASP or whosoever is the technology piece provider, they need to handle my transaction seamlessly. That's the one of the most factor that we account while starting the bit. Obviously the data dictionary part, the integration part, my business may be scattered online or offline, so we need to check how seamlessly we can transfer those data also. But as we have already launched our sandbox, I think it's a good time, we as a business or the businesses in UAE can start using or exploring our sandbox to see the entire journey from start to end, like how and in what different manner they will be able to transfer the data, so that they can visualize like how it is going to be actual when it comes to e-invoicing seamlessly.
Perfect. Very nice. I think very good point on testing or creating an environment where taxpayers can come in and verify their e-invoicing readiness. Great. I think it was amazing lessons. Great insights from both of you. It was very nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your insights.
Thanks for giving an opportunity, Akash.